Time that limited time that okay, let's just ask a couple questions that is most important for me. So one of them is like in your idea how people with mental illness can benefit from the frequency project, like how can they distinguish between a true enlightenment experience and an illusion as a result of the state of mind and illness, that sometimes like hallucination or any other type of mental experience that they have. How can they distinguish between these two?
I think the honest thing I have to say first of all is I don't feel qualified to really comment on that from any kind of deep experience. I feel that I was a Samaritan, a suicide counselor for about 5 years, and I talked to a lot of people who had what people would call, varying degrees of mental illness, and I felt that it was most successful when I simply engaged with them rather than approach them from the point of view of somebody who had a problem. And as you talk, I remember one person in particular who had almost constant hallucinations and would come in and talk. And for about 20 minutes, I couldn't really understand what he was saying. But if I followed his story rather than sort of asked a lot of questions, I began to get some deeper empathy with how he felt. And I felt that we began to communicate, possibly in a level that he wasn't used to normally, because people were so put off by the things that he was saying and his behavior. So I think that sometimes people are more open to a different perception of the world if they themselves feel like outsiders. That may seem like a rather circular way to answer your question, but I think in a way we all reach out to this world because in some sense we feel outside it and we don't really understand it. But other than that, to be honest, it's really speculation. I couldn't say without sort of talking to people whether they might have a different perception or whether they might encounter the frequency and find a way in there, perhaps that they wouldn't in a normal form of spiritual discourse. That's all I got, really. I mean,
thank you. Yeah,
specialist area, so I'd feel uncomfortable about kind of pontificating about what works and what doesn't. But I would say about the Frequency Project as a whole that we are trying specifically to reach out to people who might be put off or might not like the usual form of these things by using entertainment and humor and fantasy as well to try and get closer to these states and these feelings that we all have. I don't personally feel there's a great difference between any of us as individuals. I think we all express things in a different way, which makes us feel that some people are different from others. But I think if you listen to the deep content of what people say, they're usually just expressing their concerns and problems with being human.
Yeah, it basically is like their own experience, how they come up with the result, like, after listening or after being involved, and how we approach to them is kind of important to that they feel that they are, not different. So that's great.
Yes.
Thank you so
I
much.
mean, let me just,
Yeah.
before we move on, let me just ask you that question. How would you
Mhm.
respond to that question?
Yeah, it's like, because frequency is, as I said, is a new project. Like when I was listening, because of kind of a different scenarios and different audios that comes up, like, kind of mixture of everything. I was just thinking, people with kind of, especially with like hallucinating, how they can experience feeling and connected. And, you know, this is related to the frequency, but overall, how they can experience the enlightenment and believe that this is a true enlightenment experience they experiencing is not something based on their illusion. But you're right, is the result is important, is how they feel after that. Just continuing that, just adding one more thing, because I used to work in psychiatric hospitals, so I was like hearing a lots of kind of similar experiences to enlightenment, that people they thinking they have a being just in present, experiencing present moment, they have a feeling and they have experience. I just wanted to see how is it comparable to the true enlightenment experience, that they feel like
Yeah.
they can believe, oh, this is something not result of what's going on with their mind, it is something true, is a some true connection they
Well,
felt.
yes, exactly. And in a way, isn't that a question we ask all of ourselves, though? I
Yeah.
think that is a question I ask myself whenever I feel I have some sort of spiritual breakthrough, or I start to believe in a new set of ideas or something like that. How much of that is just your mind, creating a new framework or structure for you? That's why, in a way, most spiritual courses have all these higher levels. To start off with, you have beginner's enlightenment, and then you get to, advanced stages and things like that. It's because as human beings, we want to impose these structures. And I wonder sometimes if there is a structure on enlightenment. Um, uh, so I would
Exactly.
say that question, which perhaps the people you're talking about would ask more acutely, is this an illusion or not, is the best question you can ask yourself whenever you become part of any religion or belief system or group at all. Maybe it is.
Wonderful, thank you, I got my answer. Yeah. It's true. It's completely true. None of us can, completely, believe, okay, whatever we experience exactly, what it should be. Sometimes there is so many things behind it that we need to kind of adopt, or, things that we want to review and, make sure that what we are feeling is true feeling.
Yes,
Thank you.
I
Oh,
think that, sorry, just to jump in there, I think that cynicism is definitely the enemy of enlightenment, but I think that skepticism is an essential tool to take in. I love meeting people who've done a lot of spiritual work and are still very doubtful, very skeptical, very unsure, questioning everything. I think that's a very good way to proceed, because I've also seen the other side where people, you meet someone and 6 months later you meet them, oh my god, everything's changed for me, I've done the New Zealand wonder course, and now I feel so different. And then you meet them 9 months later, and the shit has hit the fan again, and they're in a state not just of where they were before, but I think a slight resentment about something. So I feel, and this is particularly why the frequency is in the form it is, just listen. If you get something, that's great. I don't think you need to analyze it too much. It's experiential for me. And if it does something for you, then perhaps we don't need to analyze that anymore.
definitely. Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you so much. How do you compare enlightenment, self realization, and self actualization? What's the comparison in
Uh,
your opinion?
how would you define the difference between those two?
Okay. So, enlightenment, as everyone has a different experience of enlightenment, just being a present moment, being connected to true self and universe, and kind of being in a state that you really want to be. And self-realization for me was like just knowing yourself, and finding tiny things that going on with us, but kind of is we need to have like think. deeply to know ourselves through daily experiences and anything comes up to us. And self-actualization is reaching to our highest potential. That, but like the things that I was thinking, self-actualized people, like when they reach to the potential, their highest potential, is it the they stay in that state longer, or enlightenment is something just comes and go, or just wanted to know how do you think about
Yeah,
the
well,
differences?
my own experience of even using the word enlightenment, I always slightly cringe myself because it seems like a great claim. But um, what I feel is that most of us are enlightened many, many times in a day, but that is usually outweighed by long periods when we're not enlightened. For me, it is something that you simply step in and out of. It is definitely for me to do with quietening the thinking mind. I don't feel that you can think your way to enlightenment. I feel it's almost a journey in the opposite direction where the mind quietens, and eventually, for me, there's always a point of humor where I realize my own self efforts are ridiculous. And I don't mean that lightly. I mean that is the profound realization for me, that the very attempt to build some fortress that you call enlightenment or being present or something like that, it's a terrible trap. And I think if laughter is one of my key interests because it's an unconscious action. People laugh at things they shouldn't laugh at. You see this all the time with comedy. And I think that is a form of enlightenment where we can begin to be humorous about things which our mind is telling us are not humorous at all. And humor is a form of deconstruction, and I think quite a high form of enlightenment. In if you can apply it to yourself rather than the humor of laughing at other people, then I think you can set yourself on this path. But there are dangers to believing that um, uh, when you're enlightened, then everything in your life will work out, or you can become a more fully realized human being. I think it's more that that preoccupation falls away, and you can simply be more efficient and happy and functioning as yourself with all that chaos, all those contradictions, and no answered questions at all for me. As I move forward in life, I genuinely know less and less and feel more and more comfortable being in that state of not having to create belief systems.
Mhm. So self-actualization in your idea is something different, or is something along with um
I don't see the dividing line for myself. I
okay.
feel that both these things um, are what we do. Again, there's an interesting distinction for me, which is that a lot of spiritual teaching takes you away from everyday experiences of life and points you towards something else. We usually said that place is a place of calm. It's a little bit suspiciously like me for religious beliefs that tell you that life is shitty, but when you die, it's great. So I don't really want to do all this in order to feel good in a retreat for 2 weeks a year. I want something that will work in everyday life. And in that respect, I think that we have to work with what we're given. And what we're given is a series of small incidents and relationships and, problems and things like that. That seems to me that that's our spiritual material, not so much learning the 10 ways to make yourself enlightened. So I feel that what you've explained to me in terms of self-actualization and enlightenment, they feel like the same journey to me.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Yeah, enlightenment for me is like it's just a daily life. Be yourself, like be whatever you want to be. And it's like just enjoyment that's coming from inside. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, and also outside, because
Yeah.
we don't have a choice. We live a very physical life, and again, I always wonder, we can't just sort of close our eyes and put that aside. that is one form of very valuable. Meditation is great, but meditation for me is not the object of the exercise. The object of the exercise is when we open our eyes, we're okay with what we see and who we are.
Yes.
For me, enlightenment is something that we move freely in and out of, and we must be playful and light about its elusive nature. Um, Even the act of thinking, "Oh my God, I'm not thinking," that's this kind of basic irony of any spiritual study, or that moment on Wednesday afternoon at a retreat after 4 frustrating days when you suddenly realize what it's all about, and you write down "I am love" on your workbook, and you look at it in the evening and you think, "My God, I've got it. I am love. There's nothing else to know." And then you look at that message a week later and it still has power, and you think, "I am love." And then you look at it a month later and you think, "What was I on? What was I thinking?" So that's why I say I think I don't trust anybody else's answers to these sort of questions, and I don't trust my own. I think it's just experiential, for each individual.
Total acceptance of each, self and others, and what's going on.
Yes, indeed. And I think that's also the only decent recipe we have for harmony with the world as well. Again, I'm not interested in spiritual ideas which are separate from our day-to-day existence. I want stuff you can make in the kitchen. I want to, if it's advice, it needs to be recipes that we can try out, not something that, we have to go to a fancy restaurant to eat.
Thank you. Yes, I think
Okay.
I'm
Yes.
I'm over.
Yes. Over the
It's
time.
fine.
It's
Thank
okay,
you
but
so
I'm
much
glad
for
that
that.
you're able to do that.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Thank you. I really enjoyed. Thank you
Yes.
Oh,
so
so
much for
great.
everything. And
Thank you.
I will make comment after, I listen to us all you and everything. I really like to, send you some comments about how I feel.
That's great. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
It's been a joy to talk to
Thank
you.
you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Bye
Thank you,
bye.
Ati.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Bye bye.
you.